Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello and welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson, and we're going to be talking about ambivalence or choosing. And we'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Do you ever find yourself in the predicament or the situation of trying to decide on something? And let's keep this in the relationship realm. You have more than one person that you could choose to date. But you put out there that you're going to be in the monogamous stage. So that means one person. And how do you choose that? Or do you? The not choosing is ambivalence. And you're kind of waiting for circumstances to fall out and to make the decision for you. That's not necessarily a powerful way to be in your own life. And you may wind up with nothing by doing that. I think, why ambivalence? Well, one of the reasons could be is fear. If you're not really experienced at making choices for yourself, you may find yourself feeling like, well, I always choose the wrong thing. So I wait for something to happen, and that's what I go with. Well, you will find that in life, if that's what you choose to do, because that is a choice, if that's how you operate, then you will always be getting seconds. You will always be getting, you won't be a winner that way. And it's important that you choose based on your experience. So you have to take a pause. You have to decide, what have your experiences been, and what kind of outcome do you want? If you want a powerful and successful relationship, then you have to invest yourself. You have to make choices. And a lot of them will not be easy. You may go the path of rejecting people. And that may sound like, well, you're going to hurt someone. But in fact, that is a part of life. Rejecting them does not mean that they are bad. That just means that it doesn't work for you, and you free them up to go on to be elsewhere and to seek their path, to seek their truth while you find your own. And while this may be difficult to hear, it is in fact how things operate. What I want for you, my listener, is to have the best experience, the most powerful experience you can have, and that's by making choices. Being ambivalent does not bring forward to you the opportunity to be cause in the matter. And what in fact happens is it's a sign of weakness. That's not attractive. If you were to look in a room and see the most charismatic person there, that person is a sign of strength. That person is actually making choices. And a lot of us want to emulate that. Well, you can be that in your own life by making choices. Find out for your own life what it is that's worked and not worked, and build on that. It's great to learn new things, and it's really important to learn new things about yourself. But overall, realize that you're not coasting through life, but be an active participant. But as you move through the stages in life and look back on what's happened for you, you will see that you have actually been making choices all along. Just think about this. To not choose something is actually making a choice. So ambivalence in and of itself is actually a choice, but it's not necessarily a healthy one. Whatever your fears are, it's time for you to learn about that so that you will stop being paralyzed at just being yourself. Think about what you've learned about you in the last year. You've got to have learned something. Something I've learned about myself is I enjoy being liked. And one of the hardest things for me to do was to upset someone, was to disappoint someone. But I found what was happening in my case is I was very disappointing to a lot of people because I was behaving in an ambivalent fashion. And what came about is, a great deal of loss. I had people leaving my life, and I wondered if it was because I was being a bad person. And it wasn't that. It was because I wasn't making choices, the choices I needed to make with my time, with people that I hung out with. And by and large, there was a default that what was dropping in to fill the space wasn't what I really wanted anyway. And I've had to shift and become a bit of a different person. And my life is changing right before my very eyes. Thankfully, I'm putting forward what I have learned and wanting to share that in a way with you, the listener, so that I hope it's valuable and that we can both grow from it. Make a choice. And we'll be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Here's the thought. Name something that bothers you. One of the things that bothers me is when somebody can't commit to something. I'm a person who is pretty flexible, and I like to know how things are going to go, and to know if I'm going to buy in. If I know what the deal is, then I can say either I'm in or out. And when I'm in that situation and it seems like I'm being strung along, I do get a little bothered by that. But I've also been one of those persons who's been ambivalent and didn't necessarily want to say something because I didn't want to upset the very person who was stringing me along. Now, that's ambivalence. That puts me in a bit of a quandary because I'm on hold while the other person is just doing what they want to do. Well, you got to call a stop to that. You got to be powerful in your own life, and you have to say to people, well, look, this is not working for me. And you have to risk not being liked. And for me, that was probably the big thing because I grew up an only kid who in his own neighborhood, I was a negotiator. I didn't get into fights, didn't get into trouble because I knew how to talk my way out of things. Besides, I didn't like people getting hurt anyway. I didn't like people having hurt feelings and the whole thing, and I would avoid that. But for what it's like, when you grow up and become the person that I am, then you have to learn to deal with those situations. And when you bring those kinds of problems into your adulthood, into your adult life, and into your relationships, well, you're going to create conflict. And it's going to seem like, wow, the guy doesn't want to commit. Well, that's not true. I do like to commit. I commit to lots of things. But on the outward appearance, it seems like I don't. And I, in fact, do like to commit. I commit my time and I commit my resources to many things. And therefore, I feel like that's a statement of my character. But having brought forth the part about wanting to be liked, that then creates this, the ambivalence. As I shared, the part about being liked makes me feel very uncomfortable when I have to say no to something. Because I feel like somebody's going to be let down, somebody's going to be hurt. But again, by choosing, I'm freeing myself up, and I'm allowing someone else to make a decision to move on and do the things that they need to do. Because I've never failed to be there for my family or anyone in that regard. I think there are sometimes that I may be uncomfortable because I don't give to a person who's wanting a handout on the street. And maybe that pings my my belief about helping my neighbor or helping someone else in need. And sometimes I'm just not in a capacity to do that, because one of the things that I have to learn is I have to take care of myself first. In fact, we all have to learn that. We have to learn to take care of ourselves before we can take care of someone else. And we'll be right back.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
And we're back. You know, one of the things that I was asked today had to do with online dating. And I may have kind of waxed on this a little bit in one of the other podcasts, but it had to do with having a profile and what are some of the red flags. Well, one of the things that came to mind is, I'm sure when you put out a profile, now the internet, the company that does these profiles, they can take your profile and put it on several other websites. So you could literally be on more websites than you realize. And if at some point in time you decide to close down your profile, it still could be out there. But one of the things that I find interesting is understand that when you're wanting to date someone and you're putting your personal information out there, be mindful of what you're doing. There are details to your life that are certainly don't belong in a profile. I think putting pictures of people that don't know that they're pictures on the internet is a no-no. I don't put pictures of children in photographs. I mean, you can blank them out, but I think really the photograph should be of the person who's putting in a profile. And having pictures of all the vacation places you've gone to, you can write about that and you can share that with the person when you meet them. Maybe that'll be something interesting, but they don't necessarily have to be in the profile itself. We really want to see a picture of you, and for what it means to know which one are you in the photograph. Left, right, center, wearing the funky costume. That's important. But again, back to security. Look, realize that any guy that's going to start sending you pictures of his private parts or something that's inappropriate like that, scratch it. That's not somebody you want to date. because maybe there's a place and time for that somewhere deep down in the relationship. But when you're doing this thing on the internet, that's not what you want, because that's the kind of guy you're going to get if you start going out with him. If you want hookups or something like that, there are obviously websites for that. But I'm talking about just the regular old where you're just looking to meet somebody and you hope to meet a nice person you want to go out. So people sending profiles or sending photographs of their private parts, definitely taboo. And if you're looking at somebody who keeps sending you messages and you don't want to have communication with them, and you politely told them, no, I don't think this works, then block them. Most websites that I've seen, there's a little icon that you can block that person. They can't see your profile and you're done. Again, this keeps you safe and you can keep the trash out of your inbox. Another thing to consider is when you yourself are putting up a profile, and think about what you're writing. Some of these, you don't have to put a whole lot in there, but put something, okay? Please put something in there so that a person reading your profile knows something about you. Some of these things are so generic, you can read probably 20 of them and you'll see that they say the same thing. So as if you didn't put anything in, the computer just popped something in there. That makes you look like a fraud. And, you can't expect somebody to really care about you if that's what you're doing. Another thing, I would be mindful of putting personally identifiable information in there. Oftentimes you have pictures of people that have name badges and things like that on the first and last name. Hey, you might be mindful of that, because you can blow up a photograph and see something, and that might make you vulnerable to somebody stalking you. And I have a very dim view to that. So be mindful of what's in the photograph so that somebody's not going to blow it up and be able to see your first and last name. Another thing, don't put your phone number in a profile. That obviously signals to somebody who would actually call that. I mean, who would actually call a phone number that's in a profile? I think you wait for an appropriate time to share that kind of information. And quite often, that could be a trap. That profile could be fake anyway, and the thing that they're looking to do is to get your phone number and probably sell it to someone else, and you're going to probably get a big bill at some point in time wondering, how did my number generate this big bill? Well, you got to be careful of what you're tracking on the internet, because there's a way in which they can track you back, and they'll tie a lot of things to you. So again, don't go dialing phone numbers on the profile itself. That's just a trap. You wait for the appropriate time to get that information, and then when you both decide that you want to talk or meet, then you do it where it's safe. And another thing that I would suggest is you meet in a public place, a coffee shop, something where you're around other people, and have some rules for yourself. Decide ahead of time, how far you're going to let the date go. Are we going to stay out till 10 or 11 o'clock and then call it an evening? I think that's appropriate. You need to set some boundaries for yourself and stick to them. If you want to meet the person again, great. And if it turns out that the date's not going so well, at least you have an out. You can say, well, thank you, but I'm going. And you come in your own transportation. You don't have on a first date, absolutely, you don't let them pick you up and decide that they're going to, because if it doesn't work out, now they know where you live. And you don't necessarily want somebody coming over to your house or driving by your house. I mean, that's going to be awkward. So decide for yourself your boundaries. You set the time, how long you're going to be out on the date. You drive your own transportation. You meet in a public place, because that keeps you safe. And tell somebody where you're going. That way, if something doesn't work out, then they know to come looking for you. Or they can send you a text message or a phone call to make sure that you're okay. Because you don't want to be on the date from hell and then not have a way to get out of it. Okay? That's just common sense, but I'm putting it out there and this works for both men and women. Okay? It doesn't just go one way, because they're basically crazy people on both ends of this thing, and a lot of times you don't know until you've actually met the person, because crazy people are good at creating good profiles. I mean, they're practiced at it. And the last thing that you want to do is to get caught up with somebody like that. You want them to move on. You don't want to be the victim. And if something crazy happens, report them. You can actually do it to the website. You can report the profile. If there's something wrong with it, you can report that there are a bad experience. And if necessary, hey, report it to the police. Let them know that this person is out there because if they're doing crazy things, if they've done it to you, they probably have done it to someone else, and you need to put a stop to that. Because again, it's about you being safe, and but you got to think about that before you go out on the date. This is not something that you can make all of these decisions afterwards. I mean, if you're a people person, you probably can think faster on your feet. That's great. But when you're in the moment, some of this stuff, it's too late. And, people who are predators, they can spot a victim a mile away. They're good at this kind of thing. And I don't want you to be a victim to any of this stuff. Another thing to talk about here is open relationship versus monogamy. Basically, an open relationship is something in which the partners agree to see other people, and monogamy practically means you are and that person, you're one-on-one. And, there's a lot of feelings about that. People that like open relationships are probably not going to be with somebody that wants monogamy because the two philosophies just don't mix. What's okay for you is okay for you. And I think you have to sit down and decide what you want. If you've had relationships and you feel like you have a difficult time choosing between A and B and you can't do the one-on-one thing completely, well, then you probably need to, you need to state that you need to be open to decide those kinds of things. That would be more of an open relationship where you see more than one person. And declare that, because let me tell you, the embarrassing thing that happens is that when you don't declare that, you're going to be found out. When you date more than one person and you're not clear about that with the people that you have been going out with, they will find out, and you'll be known as a fraud, and your reputation will be out there. That's just how it works. It's interesting how small the world is when you do something bad or screwy, or when you screw over someone. And whether it's man or woman, it doesn't matter. Open relationship versus monogamy, I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just that figure out who you are, what you want, and be able to have the courage to declare that. Because if it comes up that you are saying that you're monogamous, but you're dating other people, and someone finds out, well, you know what? You're toast. You don't want to be that. It's uncomfortable to be in that situation, to be found out, and there's really no amount of explanation that you can give, because if the conversation was had up front, and be willing to bring that conversation to the table. And I think it really shows commitment to yourself, because really, why are you doing this? You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it so that you can understand what it is that you want in life ultimately. And, some people are not in a place where they want to date just one individual. If you've been in a long-term relationship and things are just didn't work out, you kind of want some freedom to go out and have fun and do things with other friends, and realize that's totally okay. Because dating more than one person does not equate you're having sex with a lot of people. And I use the word sex because that, for some people, is the deciding factor of whether they're going to be monogamous or not. And that having that security of knowing that you're being physically intimate with one person, that's an important thing for many, many, many people. That's a deciding factor. But it's, your relationship is what you make it. You can have an intimate partner, and then you can have friends that you hang out with. Again, you have to declare this. You have to talk about this up front, because that's what makes it genuine. That's what makes it real. Again, some people are not comfortable with those things mixing. And if they aren't, you might want to bring that up not only for discussion, but see if there's some negotiation that can happen with that. Because if you're dealing with a partner that is not comfortable with you dating other people, then there might have been some betrayal or something that happened to them, and it makes them uncomfortable with that. But you need to know yourself and to be able to talk about it from a realistic standpoint and not from all the hype. Again, you need to know yourself and talk about it. And as far as when to have sex in a relationship, well, is it 3 dates? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 3 months? Well, I don't believe you should be having sex on the first date, and here's why. Because the chemistry, the physical part of a relationship can be pretty intense. And if that's all you're up for, is for having a hookup or whatever, then that's understood that there's nothing that we're really coming back to We're not trying to create a long-term relationship. But if you're looking for long-term, you got to be having a different conversation, and you need to work on the other things, work on some of the other compatibility issues. The things that are real important is how do you handle conflict? Again, I've talked about this, but this came up because the question was asked recently. So for those of you who are new to my broadcast here, when dealing with conflict is one of the most important things to be able to understand in a relationship. How does that person treat you? Can you talk about things? Can you be open? Can you be forthcoming? Can you do it without a lot of yelling and screaming that makes people feel uncomfortable? Because it's stuff on that scale is what pushes it beyond reasonable. Look, when you're young and you have all that fire and heat and you can yell and scream, and then, little kids, they're mad at each other for 5 minutes and then they come back and they're getting along. Well, when you're adults and you're behaving that way, there's something wrong with you. You need to be able to figure this thing out and be able to come to having a conversation with someone without the yelling and screaming. Because as we get older, we understand that we don't like that. I don't think anyone likes being shouted at or being commanded to do what somebody tells them. I think we want to be volunteers. So understanding conflict and having that discussion. And it's a real important thing to know, hey, where do you want to go out for dates? Do you like the beach or do you like the mountains? That's a big deal for people. And you got to talk about that. And you might want to take that trip to the beach or to the mountains and see what kind of person they are. Hey, when you're driving along in the car, is this a person that yells at the other drivers, or are they calm? Who wants to be with a person that experiences road rage all the time? That could be a little frightening. They could put you at risk as well as themselves. That's not something you want to buy into. And something else to think about is kids. If you're new in the dating thing and you don't have kids, well, that's certainly something to have thought about. Do you want kids or do you not want kids? That's a deal breaker, because if you're both in different places with that, you're not going to change the other person's mind. Whoever they are, they need to come to the table with their mind on how they fall on this sort of thing. So, but if you're older and you're dating kids of a certain age, and you're in that 30 to 35 or 40-year-old age range, your kids are going to be a little older than if you're 20, 21 and you're dating. Because there you may have very young children, if children at all, and then when you're a little older, well, your kids could be teenagers, and that's a very important time in the life of those kids. So what happens is the experience how that's going to reflect on your dating life, because you may or may not be available when you say, hey, Monday or Friday, let's go out on a date. Well, what happens? Friday night comes and all of a sudden the kid's sick, or you have to do something for the kids. That could change the whole evening for the person you're dating. And if they're flexible with that, again, understanding that if you're dating somebody that's got kids, those are the kinds of things that come up. They could be available or not available at a moment's notice. And, the spontaneity just may not be there. Somebody that doesn't have those responsibilities, they probably have a lot more freedom on their hands. And also, and that's for them to take advantage of. That's why they may date more than one person, because they have that kind of flexibility. So, and if you're one of those, going back to the monogamy versus non-monogamy thing, that's something to consider, especially if there's kids involved. And if you have kids and you're dating somebody that doesn't have kids, well, they're a lot freer than you are, possibly. Unless you're doing the shared parenting kind of thing, and that may open up some options for you. Another thing to consider is whether you smoke or don't smoke, or whether you drink. If those are, it's definitely something to consider. If you're not a drinker, you probably may not be comfortable with somebody that does. And if you're not a smoker, that's something that you probably have it as it's a health thing. And you don't want to be with somebody that does those kind of things, because you're not going to change them. You're not going to fix somebody. You're not going to get with somebody and then try to change them from who they are. That's something to understand about dating. You take them as they are. If they improve because they're having the experience with you as a person because you're an example, that's one thing. But if people have, those kinds of things, because those are personal choices, drinking or smoking. And You're not going to be able to convince them that your way is better. Okay? So don't expect that. But again, have it as something that you've thought about in your own experience. And if you're going back to the creating a profile thing, check that off. Whether you want, whether you smoke or whether you or don't drink, or whether you have kids, don't have kids. That's really important information. Another thing that comes up is, who's driving? And, well, I've always driven. I'm a person who likes to drive the car. I'm not necessarily comfortable with other people driving, but, the interesting irony is when there's both partners, that other partner may not be comfortable with you driving their transportation. Some women are, some guys are, but there are people that are not comfortable with you driving their transportation. So you may be stuck with all the driving duties, especially if you're a control person. And you might negotiate that, talk about that. And that means giving up control, and you're going to have to put some trust out there. But if you've got one or the other who's sort of a maniac when they're driving, you're probably got some control issues, and you're going to have to let go a little bit. And again, learn to trust. But that's something you all have to work on, and have your listening skills, especially if you're driving. Because if you have a nervous passenger, you're not making it fun for them, right? Okay, think about that. Be nice to your passengers. If you want to make a good impression on somebody, bring a gift. Bring a small gift, a token of appreciation that you appreciate. A card. A card is nice. I think guys like cards. Women, look, give the guy a card. He will appreciate it. It may seem not manly to do something like that, but believe me, it's nice. You'll be remembered. A little note, guys. If you're, I don't know a woman who isn't into flowers. Okay, but you find out what it is, whether it's roses or sunflowers or calla lilies or irises, whatever the flower is. Find out what it is, and do that once in a while. Don't be cheap. The thing is, I think we all hate cheap dates, huh? When they're cheap, they won't spend a dime on you. And I'll tell you, here's an etiquette thing, guys. If you're paying the bill, don't start whipping out all the coupons, because that seems cheap. Your date's worth the time to get dressed up and to look nice, and you take it to a nice place. When you pay the bill. Just pay it. You're investing in your future. So make it a habit of doing something and make it look good. Wash the car. Put on your clean clothes. Shine your shoes. Make it look good. And ladies, wear your hot outfit. Guys like to have a woman dress up for them because it makes them feel special. At the end of the evening, when you finally had the date and you're saying your goodbyes, or the appropriate thing to do was a light hug and a small peck on the cheek, or maybe a peck on the lips. That's appropriate. Don't go for the deep tongue kissing. That's not appropriate on a first date, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create some space here for people to move into. And if you do too much on that first evening, then it's going to go way too fast, and you're not going to have time to really you're not going to give yourself an opportunity to either move this to the next level or to slow it down. Because if you go too fast, then it implies all kinds of things that you may not want to have read into it. But you get an opportunity to talk about it. And if you say you're going to call the next day, be sure and call. Say what you mean and mean what you say, because people appreciate that. It's called integrity. And work on that part. And it opens the doors to so many other benefits in terms of conversation and actually having a second date. And that's the thing about a first date. You decide if you want a second date. That's what a first date is. A first date does not guarantee anything in the future. It's just an opportunity to get to meet someone and accept no. If it doesn't work out, accept that it doesn't work out, because it's got to work for both people. And if it works out, great. You get to move forward. I want you to be happy. That's what it is to having a great relationship.